First off, tell me, what is Muzzy Lane?
Muzzy Lane is a serious games company. We make games for education, healthcare, business, and we also do games for the commercial space.
So when you say serious games, that sounds a bit like an oxymoron. How do you balance those two very different words?
Well, the broad definition of serious games is any game that is done for something other than purely entertainment. So, when you're in education, a game has a lot of the similarities of a game in the commercial space, but it has a learning objective. So the games that we do have objectives that are based in something that is serious.
So tell me about Government in Action.
Government in Action is one of the games in the practice series that we are doing for McGraw-Hill Higher Education. McGraw-Hill is a large textbook publisher, and so they have a catalog of materials that they give to teachers every year, that they sell to teachers every year, and our games are now part of that catalog. And McGraw was very interested in having an interactive element to their in addition to their textbooks, because they understand the direction of that education is going. Interactivity is a really big thing right now. So Government in Action is a game where you actually get to play a member of Congress. Right. And there are hundreds of thousands of kids every year that have to take U.S. history. And this is mainly AP high school, college, right? So it's higher education. And there's no choice. They must take it. It's a required course. And unless you're studying political science, you're probably not that interested in something like that. So this gives people a chance to be engaged and actually see what it's like to play a member of Congress. We didn't have people play a member of Congress because the subject that they're studying is Congress specifically, but we found that it touched on all the learning objectives that they needed to for that class. So when we create games, someone comes to us and they have a need. In this case, they needed a game that was for U.S. history classes. And we start with the learning objectives. What are they trying to learn in that class? And that's how we decide what kind of game to design around it.
So when you are designing a game like this to solve a specific problem, how do you approach the issue? So it's like, let's say I have a game, I need people to brush their teeth more or something. Mm-hmm. How do you deconstruct that issue and create a game around it?
Well, you're always working with people who are subject matter experts. So, our team has a lot of design experience, and, every game is different. Some games are role-playing games, some are turn-based games, some are more abstract games, representative games. We did another practice game, Practice Marketing, which is aimed at marketing students. And so there's an abstraction of, over here you're running a backpack company. You're the marketing manager for a backpack company. So you're deciding, over here, what does it look like? Over here, who aiming it at? Students, commuters, fashion trendsetters, and that determines the design of the bag and what features it has, and so all of those things are represented in these different areas. And you can, play this game, but you're applying all of the lessons that you've learned in the class. And when you ask, how do we know what to do? Well, it's kind of like for any game. You try a few things, and we brainstorm some different ideas, and then the designers find something they think will work well, and we run it by the subject matter experts and see if it's going to do the job to establish the learning objectives.
What's the most challenging field you've had to make a game for?
I think the game we're doing for with Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, the smoking cessation game Quit It, is difficult because it's a game that actually has an element of behavior modification. Not like Malcolm McDowell with eyes open. Not that kind of behavior modification. It's self-directed. So this is for patients who have had cancer-related surgery, and they have someone helping them with coping mechanisms in the hospital so they don't start smoking again. But then when they go home, they don't have that support anymore, and so the game allows them to develop some mantras and some coping tools that they can use to help keep them from falling back into the smoking habit again. And that was hard. I mean, trying to do a game, that was the first time we had done a game that had that level of behavior modification. So,
So, how much inspiration do you actually take from more traditional games, like AAA games? Do you play XCOM? Do you play Last of Us? And do these give you ideas for how to work on your games, or are they useless?
Oh, I think there. Everybody in our company is a gamer, and all designers certainly are. You get inspiration from all the games you play. I mean, one of the games that we made for Cengage Learning, which is in the App Store, is for the iPad. It's called Algeburst, and it uses a sort of bejeweled mechanic, a Connect 3 type. So but instead of having just colors or something, it's algebraic equations, and when you match three values, it explodes. You get points, and it moves down. So. Clearly, that's sort of a classic game mechanic that we applied to our serious game.
So there's a bit of a concern in, I guess, industry pundits right now that some games, I'm certainly not yours, but that some AAA games perhaps are using psychology in a negative way to kind of make players addicted. Mm-hmm. What's your perspective on that? Do you think that can be true? Do you think it's dangerous? Do you think it's? I don't think you think it's awesome, but.
I definitely agree with that. I think. A lot of the earlier MMOs, especially, I always thought of it as more like gambling. I mean, because if you're playing a normal game, there's a beginning, middle, and end. But the goal of an MMO is to keep people paying that $15 a month as long as possible. So the quests and things are very much like the slot machine, where you can do the same thing over and over again, and then just when you're getting sick of it and you're ready to throw your hands up, then you go up a level, or you solve the thing and you move on to something new. But it's got to be stretched out so much. And I always found that distasteful. And I think that they've definitely gotten away from that. Some of the newer MMOs do not do that and really try and change that and add more content. But I think that's an example of what you're talking about. I'm sure that there are plenty of others.
Well, okay, so here's another kind of weird question. You're working in educational games a lot. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who might be your potential clients get a lot of negative news about games. They're cast in a very kind of harmful light, and games are terrible for children. Do you ever have conversations with these guys? Have you ever been in the position where you have to defend games to any of these people?
Yes. Why are you having our children play Grand Theft Auto? That sort of thing. Yes. Especially when we first started, we ran into more of that. And that I think we were first starting to introduce our games in around 2005, 2006, and we were doing a history game, making history for high school classes and high school and college. We did get some of that. It was pretty easy to get past that, though, and I think now it's much less. Teachers innately understand that interactive learning is superior to passive learning. It's just, is the content valid? That hasn't been there. So teachers have been trying to retrofit commercial games, like a lot of teachers will use, like Civ, or Age of Empires or something. So you hear about that all the time. It's definitely less than it used to be. I also think that as the years go by, we're getting generations of people who are the teachers, and now the administrators, and the people who are going to be, in government, who are gamers themselves. And so they know the reality versus the hype that you hear on some cable news channel.
What about your definition of fun? Maybe some, people would say like, oh, these games, it's not fun to learn stuff. I only want to play games where I don't know, do whatever is fun. We had a discussion about this in our panel last night. When you say our serious games fun, well, what is, fun for some people? I mean, people do so many serious things when they play. And you go through so much humiliation and failure when you're playing a game. That boss that kills you 30 times before you finally win, but then you win. Yeah. And so those losses that came before and that frustration, it makes the win that much sweeter. So I think in our case, when people talk about serious games, it's how can it be serious and fun at the same time? But it is the fact that you're doing it for a serious purpose, for a learning purpose specifically, is the serious part of it. The game itself still has to be fun. It has to be engaging. Yeah. And I think that's the key. Fun really is, whether it be a commercial game or a serious game, all about engagement. Are you really interested in making this happen and succeeding in what you're playing? Is there a holy grail of serious game development for you? Is there like a point where you're like, yes, now we've made the perfect educational game?
No. I think education is changing, and I think right now it's starting to change rapidly, and the way people learn, and so we'll continue to evolve with that. I mean, there'll never be a perfect game. There'll always be bugs. Come on, you play games. Yeah. Have you ever played a game without any bugs? Come on, software. Yeah. But I'm being facetious. But to answer your question, I don't think there's ever going to be a definitive serious game model, because it starts with the objectives, and that will be different for every subject that you teach. Yeah. Right.